My name is Morgan. I'm a produce safety technician based out of the Ottawa Conservation District in Grand Haven. I service West Michigan all the way to Lansing.
And I'm Patrick. I am the produce safety technician for Southwest Michigan. I cover Allegheny, Kalamazoo, Van Buren, Berrien, and then the counties east of that as well. Hi, Rosie.
Good morning. Do you want to introduce yourself, Heather, before you get...
Hi everyone, I'm Heather Borden. I work for MSU Extension, but I am, my role is the Produce Safety Logistics Coordinator on the Michigan On-Farm Produce Safety Team. So at some point we'll explain why we're all from these different organizations, but are on the same team.
And Joe.
Good morning everyone, my name is Joe Smith. I'm with the Michigan Department of Agriculture and Rural Development. I'm the Produce Safety Specialist. I kind of am a liaison between Morgan, Patrick, and our other technicians. MSU Extension, and then I also work with our inspector team at the Michigan Department of Agriculture. So I kind of coordinate all of us together to make sure that we're all on the same page and ensuring that the messaging you're getting from Patrick, Morgan, and all your technicians is consistent with what you'll hear from inspectors if you need an inspection, but we'll kind of get into more of that later. So thank you all for being here.
Thank you. Also, I just want to start out, if you guys have any questions at any point, this is a conversation. Don't save them to the end, just shout them out. So Patrick and I are going to be discussing budget-friendly wash pack stations. So before we get into that, a little bit about produce safety techs. We help you navigate produce safety on your farm. We are free, voluntary, and confidential, kind of like the MEAT program, if you guys are familiar with that. The main meat of our role is this little guy, the Produce Safety Risk Assessment. We use it when we go on your farm. For a lens of talking about worker training, poop, cleaning and sanitizing. And then if you hit all these green boxes and have a written food safety plan, you can get a certificate, produce safety through MDARD, which comes with logo usage. It says participating farm. You can use that on all your logos, your marketing, stuff like that. Anything you want to add, Patrick, to that?
No.
Okay.
I mean, we do have, you're going to go hit cost share and stuff too. So,
yeah. There's cost share available for growers that are working with a technician, because we understand that sometimes the things that we are recommending for you guys to do is not always free. So we have cost share available to help lessen that financial burden. Also some background about produce safety and regulations and rules. The risk assessment is kind of like if the produce safety rule, which is like a FDA regulation, that is what Joe is going to use when he is on your farm. He's going to use the produce safety rule lens. And then there's GAP, good agriculture practices. These are market demanded. So if you're selling to Walmart, they'll ask you to have a GAP audit. They're not free, but they go beyond the produce safety rule as far as what they require to pass that audit. And the risk assessment is like if they had a baby. So if you're a grower and you want to make sure you're hitting the requirements, the basic requirements, the risk assessment is a good tool for that, and also helps you get prepared for expanding your market potentially. So I like to visualize that because it took me a second to get when I started. So yeah, feel free to add if you got anything.
No, you covered it.
Thank you. So this is our team. We had just introduced everyone from these different parties. There's us technicians through the conservation districts. There's 6 of us throughout the state, and there's a map here at the end of the slideshow if you're curious who your technician is and what region. There's MSU Extension. They do a lot of education stuff. They organize our 3 parties, so we're all on the same page as far as training and outreach events like this. And then there's MDARD, like Joe. They're coming on farm to enforce the produce safety rule, and they're the regulators. So before we get into this, though, I want to ask a brave soul to come up and draw a wash pack station, theoretically. There's no wrong answers. I'm curious just where you guys, what is a wash pack station to you? I also have baby Lindor chocolate packages.
We can add this to the incentive if you'd like it.
What's that?
A dosing bottle.
Oh, I couldn't see the other half of it. Okay.
Yeah, so maybe that would entice someone with the candy.
Yeah. Good morning treat, in my opinion. If not, someone can tell me what to draw, and I can draw it if you give me some components. Greg! Thank you, Greg. Feel free to draw whatever.
So we should draw like mine?
Yeah, or you can draw yours. That'd be a good example.
So this is what we do. I don't know if it's right. You're probably gonna come tell me this summer. So this is off the back of our barn. We've got a concrete slab. This is the barn back here. Water flows this way. It's graded, so the water goes off this way. There's a canopy on it over top of it. Keep off the sun and bird poop. We've got a 3-bay stainless steel sink here that I bought from a beef jerky store that went out of business. We've
Innovative.
got a farm-made spray table here. It's a wooden frame with a galvanized cage metal on it. Over here I've got a hand wash sink with soap. And inside the barn we have paper towels. Single-use paper towels. Yeah, and then we've got hoses. We've got a hose that goes this way to service this. We've got a hose that kind of comes out here. The hydrant's in the barn right here. And our produce cooler's right here. It's got a cool bot in it. It's 8x8. And so the produce comes in from the field. We've got to store our harvest totes over here. We've got a rack of harvest tools here. Oh, and right here we've got a clipboard that has a form where we're supposed to, if I get the crew trained right, record every time we clean or sanitize anything, which we do. We've been doing it every harvest day. Scrub out the harvest totes and clean the harvest knives. And this is where our harvest totes are stored, up off the ground on a rack. And so the produce comes from the field into here and is sprayed or washed. It's loaded into those big black bulb crates, and goes right into the cooler. And then we bring the truck over here and we bring them out of the cooler and load them into the truck and go make money, ideally.
Thank you. That was beautiful. You hit every category I was thinking of, so
Yeah.
thank you. Oh yeah, grab your chocolate. Get your prizes.
Thank you.
Does anyone else want to theoretically draw their wash pack? Doesn't have to be the only model. There's lots of models, as we'll talk about. So the three main components that I like to separate when I'm looking at wash pack is infrastructure. So really what you have available works. Anything from tables, a sink, an awning. You don't have to have a sink if you're not washing anything, but hand washing is important. So having some kind of hand wash station, which I think Heather will be talking about, some foreshadowing a little bit. The flow of produce. So thank you for drawing that. That was perfect, because that was going to be something that I always think about, is like, where is the flow of produce going through this wash pack? The flow of water. Where is the water going to? Are people stepping in it? Is it going into a produce field? And then also the flow of record keeping. How is that built into the logical flow of your wash pack? Is it feasible to fill out before and after you're cleaning? And then also cleaning itself. What kind of surfaces are present? So you mentioned wood. That works. You can't really sanitize wood, however, you can clean it. You gotta let it dry. So what you have available kind of depends on what your cleaning will look like. Is there anything else facet-wise?
I guess, yeah, the flow is a big important part. You don't want dirty produce going back over clean produce to potentially cross-contaminate what already has been cleaned. Flooring's something that you should really think about, because you don't want something that is going to be splashing onto your work surfaces. You don't want something that is going to be has potential of contaminating your produce either. So those are big things to think about, is the flow and the flooring. And then, like you mentioned, you want something kind of over top to prevent any poop from flying from the sky. And I think everything else has pretty much been covered.
Yeah, I'll also say, as far as cleaning methods, power washing I see a lot. And power washing gets a lot of visible filth, organic matter off whatever surface you're cleaning. However, if you're power washing right in the middle of your wash pack, let's say you're power washing right in the middle, things might spray up and reverse the cleaning you just did on your sink or your table. So that's something to think about as well, is like the proximity of where you're power washing. I also want to draw a hand wash station. I know there's one right there, but hand washing is, you got to do it before you're handling produce. So having hand washing available near the wash pack is ideal. Running water is required to wash your hands. That doesn't mean you need some infrastructure like a pump right there. It can be you fill it up at your house and you take it to the wash pack station to your farm if they're two different locations. So you don't need a running pump water infrastructure to have the running water for hand washing. So kind of like that tub right there. You got a gallon with a little spout. Somehow it's off the ground. I seen like plant stands or like 2x4s kind of screwed together to sit on. Some catchment for the water. Soap, as Greg mentioned, perfect. Soap cannot replace sanitizer. So you can have sanitizer with soap, but you can't have only sanitizer. Good to know. Then some kind of towels. Technically, the produce safety rule says like sanitary towel service. So you mentioned single-use paper towels, great. A lot of people also use reusable ones, but you gotta think about what that means sanitary-wise. Probably washing them after every use. So having some kind of catchment for those paper towels or reusable towels. And then of course thinking about where the water flows and things like that. Is there anything missing for hand wash station? Okay, perfect.
No, it's water, soap, and towels, right?
Is there anything that you guys have seen from a wash pack station that is missing here? Because these are some of the main components I think about when I'm on farm, but I learn something new every time I'm on operation. So is there something that you've seen of like, wait a minute, we didn't say that this wasn't reflected in this model, but I've seen this, can I do this?
Do you have to have something to catch the water, or can it be the grass?
For the hand washing? I would say it depends on if someone's walking through it and if it's going to flow into a produce area. Now, technically, Eagle says something different, but yes, Joe.
Yeah, Rosie, to answer your question, it is required that the hand washing water be caught somehow. It doesn't have to be plumbed to a drain or anything, but it has to be caught and disposed of properly. So in Michigan, that means basically to a sewer system of some sort, since it's considered wastewater.
What about the wastewater from the produce pack station? Does that have to be caught, or can it go?
I think that's more of a situational answer, and that's something that the Department of Environment, Great Lakes and Energy, or Eagle, would cover, and I'm not able to speak to that rule. But I think it depends primarily if there's chemicals mixed into that water, but I could be wrong on that.
It's not just chemicals, and it also is going to depend on the inspector or the Eagle representative of the area. I know they're more strict down in like Borden than they are up here. So in a lot of places, Eagle is allowing that discharge water to go into grass as long as it's a buffer before going into a water source. In other areas, they're requiring it to go through a lot more different rules before it gets to the ground, if that makes sense. So, and it also depends on how much of that discharge water there's going to be. So if you have very small scale, they're not going to be as worried as like a much bigger operation.
Yeah, and that's I think where the factors of foot traffic and where is it flowing would be important, is the small scale, like you're saying.
Right, well, foot traffic's going to be an issue no matter what you're doing, but like as far as the discharge and the rules for it, that's something that it falls under Eagle's purview.
And I've seen like sinks that have like a piping system that's technically considered catchment, right? It doesn't have to be like a bucket or something, you know, somehow it's being pushed away and disposed of, like Joe said. So good question, Rosie, thank you. I know that came up in a grower training lately as well, so.
I've heard growers ask that.
Yeah.
Or feel worried that that's gonna be a problem.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's a big depends. So
Yeah, a gray area.
If Eagle comes out, it's going to be an issue, and it also depends on who's coming out. Yeah.
I'm sorry, what's Eagle?
Eagle's the Department of Environment, Great
Great
Lakes and
Lakes.
Energy.
Yeah.
So they are, MDEQ turned into Eagle. So Department of Environmental Quality became Eagle after the whole Flint crisis. So,
Why would they come out to the farm?
because they're the ones that are in charge of anything going into our water systems.
Right, but what would trigger them coming onto the farm?
So a lot of the bigger operations are required to have licensing for discharge. They're going to come out if they have a big operation. I mean, you got a 1,000-acre tomato operation. They're going to have a ton of discharge, and that's going to end up in our lake somehow. So they're going to figure out how that's filtering before it goes in.
You mean
If that makes sense.
If you're not a giant farmer, how would they know to come out?
Yeah.
Oh, that's,
They wouldn't.
they
until
wouldn't.
somebody
Yeah.
said something.
All right, yeah.
Yeah.
I guess my real question is, how do I keep them from coming onto the
You don't tell them. Yeah.
A real pain in the butt.
It's a safe space here.
Yeah, no, it's, they're not going to, for the
Yeah,
most
do
part.
your due diligence to make sure the water's not of crappy quality, and you likely won't see anyone.
Yeah, we also have a video on our website, which is, I don't know if you have that on any of the slides.
Yes.
All right, but there's a video on our website with a representative of Eagle talking about this topic. So I think it's like a 5-minute video, and she's talking about discharge and the rulings about it and how they see it at her level.
I don't have that video on the slide. I have a different 5-minute video.
But you have
But
the
we
website,
could share,
right?
yeah,
Okay.
we can pull it up for you. Yeah. No, so it's a very good question, and it's hard because, like Joe said, it's a different department. We can't speak for them. They can tell us what they might see, but yeah, a middleman per se. A
Yeah,
little bit.
if you tell
Yeah.
them, you're gonna have to go through a bunch of hoops to get the licensing,
Mm-hmm.
and it can be pretty annoying. So,
Good question. Thank you. Are there any other WashPack questions about infrastructure, flow, cleaning? Yes.
About the flow of water like off the concrete pad, it's like kind of like a specific question. The concrete pad that we have for our produce washing station, we're having issues with water draining because the concrete pad is not very high off of the ground. We're having like water collecting. What would be the best way to fix that? To get, of course, the water to drain off of the concrete pad without. Because I was thinking some kind of like trench around it where it would drain, but I don't know how that would work with like water drainage.
so is it
Yeah.
just collecting in the middle? Is it not, is there no slope on the pad?
There is, but it goes kind of contrary to the slope of the ground around it. So
Okay.
it seems to be kind of like a
Oh.
of dirt, but
I mean, if
Okay.
there's something obstructing its flow, you can get rid of that. But if it's just like a level pad, you're gonna want something to get off the ground a little bit so you're not standing in puddles and splashing that around, which you can get like the rubber matting that they use in restaurants, something like that. But if you can get if it has a slope to it, getting rid of any obstruction that is impeding the flow of the water is your best bet.
could we do something like sorry, I'm struggling to explain like how the dirt is around.
Do you want to draw it?
No, you don't. I guess is there, because we had considered building some kind of trench around the like, for example, because ours is actually kind of similar to what Hebrew, in like the back corner, there seems to be like a dirt buildup. Could we build, would there be a trench situation in which that would be okay?
I guess I'm not Eagle, so I don't know, but if I were on farm and you were to have some way to make sure the water wasn't pooling, I think that would be
I mean,
good.
this is also just splash water she's talking about. It's not like water discharge.
Oh,
so,
okay.
Yeah, I mean, I can't picture what you're talking
Yeah, I know. That's why I'm like,
explaining it very poorly.
No.
Yeah.
The soil's kind of coming up over the concrete a
Yeah.
little bit,
Yeah.
yeah, if you just want to shovel it away so that.
A squeegee.
It flows off,
Yeah.
Yeah.
there's no issue with that.
And you can also, if like, you can dig around that concrete pad if that's, so I'm visualizing just a concrete pad, right? It might have a slope and it's got berms around it that's holding it in the spot.
Oh, okay.
You can, I mean, one option I guess would be to ditch out around it. You do like a foot down, a foot wide, and then just fill that with like rocks.
Okay, that's exactly what I was picturing. Okay.
Like a French drain around the back.
Yeah,
Those
yeah.
words. Those are the ones I was You did. Thank you.
And you can like squeegee it away and remove it from the concrete so it's not standing and stuff if that's what's happening too. So, yeah.
Now, can the water be potable, or does it have to be run? Does it have to have a line? Like, can I take water from my house and bring it in?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
Just making sure.
Yeah, the requirement, this is coming up, is that anything that you use post-harvest and also for hand washing is E. coli free, has no detectable generic E. coli. So assuming your house doesn't have that, that's good. Yeah.
And maybe when you're transporting it, if it's not in a enclosed container, maybe cover. I don't know, are you doing like 5-gallon buckets or?
No, I'm thinking, like, I have a 65-gallon,
Oh.
like a tank thing.
Okay.
so-
It's
Oh, okay.
enclosed?
Yeah, it's got lid.
I think once,
Have you considered?
yeah.
Just making sure that that transport vessel is
Yeah.
cleaned regularly, so
Right.
making sure, I mean, I'm not gonna, there's no requirement to test every single batch that you take through there, but just to be mindful of it if you see any dirt build up. Contaminate the water.
This saves money digging water lines to it, right?
Yeah,
Yep.
exactly.
Yeah. No, you just want whatever water you're using to wash to be free of E. coli. And, yeah.
Yeah. Good question. That comes to the point of like, you don't need a water infrastructure whole system. You just, what's available to you works. We can make it work as if it's in the requirements. There's a lot of ways to meet those requirements. It's not just one way fits all. So, which makes it tricky sometimes because it's intentionally gray. So we help you navigate that gray area, but sometimes it's not always the most clear. So it's a pro and a con. Yeah. Anything else? Some trivia time, just as we were talking about it. What are some key components of a hand washing statement? Or station, sorry. Whoops, it's too early. Soap. Can you give me one more? For some chocolate?
After you too.
Oh, you don't have to, but if you...
Somebody's paper towel.
Perfect. Running water, E. coli free, soap, sanitary towels, so that can be single-use towels, or if you have reusable towels, you're just putting them away into like a bucket or something after every use. And then of course, a catchment system for those towels and a catchment system for the wash water. Yes, perfect. And that's an example. I have it printed out right by Patrick's head, an example of one. True or false? You can sanitize a surface without cleaning it first, assuming you use sanitizer. False. You guys are so good. Okay. Yes, you have to clean before you use the sanitizer. Now, coming back to a wood surface, can't sanitize a wood surface. You can still clean it, but you gotta let it dry. So this also depends on what surfaces you are cleaning and sanitizing. I also say for sanitizer, it's really important to look at the label to say it's food contact surface approved, especially with like bleach solutions. Not all bleach solutions are approved for food contact surfaces, so it's important to read those bleach labels before you're diluting it. So, are there any questions about that? Okay. Who here has a farm kitty? Hey, I love farm cats. My family farm has like personally 16. My mom is a cat woman, so I get it. It's nice to have a furry friend around. But when we're talking about wash packs, maybe just making sure that kitty is not sitting in the bins, and if they are, you're going to clean them after the cat's sitting in them, especially if it's an enclosed wash pack station. They can't be an enclosed facility, but if it's partially open, it's a little different management style. Also thinking about where that cat is pooping and what is your process in place to ensure that that risk from the poop is going to be mitigated, whether you're removing it and cleaning whatever the poop is on afterwards. Maybe they got a litter box on the farm. I don't know. That'd be a fancy farm cat. But is there anything you want to add about that, Patrick?
Yeah, don't let cats in.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We
and
love
where the
them,
produce
but-
goes.
Yeah. This is a quick video I had about some examples, and it also talks about flooring, which is important that we were just discussing. So I'm gonna pull that video up here.
And sanitizing equipment, harvest buckets,
It's not-
and other food
it's not
contact
playing.
surfaces
Oh,
can be really challenging when you only
I'm sorry. How do I have to pull it over, you think? Oh,
Look at that. Technology.
Gen Z coming. I'm just kidding. My office folks always, every time there's a tech question, it's like, Gen Z, come here. I don't know everything about technology, okay?
But you know how to figure
cleaning
it
and
out.
sanitizing equipment,
Yeah.
harvest buckets, and other food contact surfaces can be really challenging when you only have a hose and a piece of grass to do it on. Wash stations are a good place to do this kind of cleaning, but a built one can be expensive. If the place where you need the wash station is rented, it isn't easy to pick up and move either. An affordable and portable option is to use readily available materials to put a multi-use wash station together. We caught up with Michael Hutchinson, a produce safety technician on the east side of Michigan, and Remy Harrington of Sioux City Farm and Food Network to hear how she is putting together her new portable wash station.
So tell me about your farm. Tell me about the site here.
We purchased the property, it was a tax foreclosure, and we bought it from the county. We had to advocate to get an agricultural use variance on this property, and then we started development on the property last year. And we got it excavated and leveled and all of the things, and so we're still building, and so that's where we are.
So why did you decide on this design?
Oh, I decided on this design because it's what's available. We're building infrastructure here, and so we want to make sure that we're being judicious with our funding and making sure that we're making all the best decisions. And so we got those pallets for free. We drove out to South Haven, to go to the farmer's market out there, and I saw them, and I was like, oh my gosh, can I have those? But some of the things, like, we had to go to Lowe's. So we got the sink from Lowe's, and we got the hosing and things like that from Lowe's, and we borrowed the tent. And so ultimately, we'll develop more, and and as we start to prioritize like what's most important and what's not important, then we will probably have more money to do more things. But the goal right now is to have all of the aspects of like a complete food system that's sovereign.
Awesome. All right, so with that, I think we'll get ready to show the build.
The materials you'll need for this project are 4 pallets, several restaurant floor mats, a pop-up awning, and either a stock tank or utility sink. The first step to putting together an inexpensive wash pad is creating a flat floor out of several pallets. The biggest reason for the pallets is so no water puddles up on the ground you're standing in. Those puddles can hold a lot of nasty germs that can get on food and equipment. An additional step on creating the floors is to cover the pallets with restaurant floor mats. The covering would improve traction and keep a person from accidentally getting their foot caught on the slats of the pallets, tripping and falling. Now you need a basin to fill with water to either wash produce in or to wash equipment in. You can either use a stock tank or a utility sink, whichever is least expensive or most available. In either case, you want to consider where the water goes when the basins get emptied. They shouldn't contaminate other water sources or create puddles for employees or vehicles to track through. Finally, a cover over the whole setup provides some shade from the sun and protection from any birds that might poop from overhead. These wash stations can usually be built for under $150, making them affordable for most small growers, and it gives them a hygienic place to wash produce, equipment, and harvest containers. Now we'll catch up with Landon Tito, a Michigan produce safety technician in the Upper Peninsula, and Laura Brosius of Full Plate Farm to see how she put together her wash station.
I am here today at Full Plate Farm with Laura, and we are currently in her wash pack station. We're basically under a carport, a low-cost awning structure. We've got some utility sinks for washing and some foldable tables and things like that. And so this space serves as a really efficient wash pack area. Laura, can you tell me why you chose to build a design like this?
This was a big piece of property when the farm began, so there wasn't any existing infrastructure, and we also didn't start out with a lot of capital, so we were looking for something that was affordable, kind of first and foremost, but then also met food safety standards. I, of course, added the pallet floor, which helps keep everything else off the ground. It prevents pooling water, allows us to spray down the deck surface, and then added a few other accoutrements, such as the shelf over here and some of the mag strips that hold our harvest tools and stuff.
Another thing you didn't mention too was you installed some homemade hose hooks out of wire hangers, clothes hangers, to keep the hoses up off of the ground so they're not dragging and any potential bacteria contamination that way. Is there anything that you would change or wish you had built out differently?
The pallet floor is functional, but I would say make sure you go after some high quality pallets, or if you can get a hold of them, use the plastic style or plastic decking. We've had some problems with sort of pallets that didn't start out in great shape, becoming sort of hazardous as we move around the space.
All right, well, thank you so much for your time today, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your busy season.
Thanks.
Any thoughts from that video? I like the tool storage mention. Greg, you drew that on your model, and that's also important to keep in mind too, is where you're keeping those cleaning tools for the wash pack as well. But anything else you wanted to add from that? Or anyone?
Yeah, I mean, that build out's probably not $150 anymore, but
Yeah. Oh, true.
yeah, it can still be done and pretty inexpensive though.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me more about the anti-fatigue mats. What do they bring to the?
So I think in the video they were used for the context of making sure people weren't tripping over the pallet boards as well. And Patrick also mentioned them earlier as far as like if you're having water, make sure it's not splashing up or slipping, people aren't slipping on it. That's my understanding from it. Although that's another thing you might have to clean eventually. Sometimes they harbor a lot of stuff, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they're used the same as they'd be used in a restaurant. They're keeping you off the floor, so you're not standing in standing water. It gives a little, if you're sitting there all day, it gives you a little bit more cushion. And I mean, they still need to be cleaned frequently, but it's just another precaution, I suppose.
One other utility to that was actually the fact that nails pop out of those pallets over time, and that kind of creates an extra buffer space with those holes in it, or like the nail to not snag a shoe or
Yeah.
whatever too. So.
safety thing. Human safety thing, not produce
Yeah.
safety thing.
Right, exactly, human safety, yep.
Any other questions from that video that you saw? Okay, cool. Another thing I wanted to put out there is record keeping. Like Greg mentioned, another part of a wash/pack station is keeping those records of when you're cleaning that equipment. So somehow building that into the flow of your operation. It can be a paper clipboard with a pen attached. It can be a Google form that people can just hit and fill out, and it automatically goes through its spreadsheet. What that medium looks like is up to you. Whatever works best for you works. There's some food safety plan templates available as well. That really is like a conglomerate of all your operating procedures, every process that you do written down into a nice little book. It can be used as a training tool. Someone comes on farm, they can read that. You have your training record done. You say, yep, this person read this on this day, supervisor initials. You got that checked off. And it's also nice to have everything in one place. So it just helps you get organized. Yeah, good resource. And us technicians, we go through these food safety plans all the time. So if you have any questions while you're writing yours, or you have one that you need help updating, I literally sat down with a couple weeks ago to literally type out their plan with them. So that is part of our job. So if you got any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. Some more resources I want to point out, and Heather might talk about these too, is the Michigan On-Farm Produce Safety website, where I think that Eagle video is, Greg, so I can find that and send it to you. Yeah, I remember we talked about it once too, a couple months ago. There's the Agri-Food Safety website from MSU with a lot of resources and also templates available. And then there's the produce safety newsletter, which I would really recommend. It's a monthly newsletter with varying topics from like indoor production, setting up wash packs, farm cats, any type of topic, and us technicians and MSU create that content for it. So I really like it. It helps me see how other technicians are framing things, what verbiage they're using, and it's also fun. So I would really recommend that. I want to give everyone a second. Okay. And this is a technician map, so if you're curious about who your local technician is, I have some paper copies available, and we also have a table in the hallway going to like the main table room, I guess, or where you checked in, where we have more maps available as well. So if you got any questions, this is who you reach out to. Thank you guys for having us. I think Heather's next, but that was a great discussion. Thank you guys.
All right,
All right.
so I am, thank you. You want to do a quick sound check, Jeff? Okay. All right, so Phil Tocco, maybe some of you know him, is my colleague at MSU. He's always around, but not today. I'm channeling Phil. So I wanted to talk a little bit about safe dispensing, and of course, if we have time, we'll talk about this, but you can also just take a look at it and kind of, it's a simple way to set up a hand washing station. So some of the things some of you may encounter that could be challenging are, one, if you're using Sanidate, it's a peroxyacetic acid sanitizer. If you're using that, you've probably seen it come in a container that's about this size, a mini bulk. Has this cap on it, and you may not know that a lot of people will just wrestle this cap off, right, and then glug the Sanidate into another container. One different way that you could use this cap is to actually remove this yellow part in the center. It's meant to be removed. And there's this handy tool, but you can also find a flathead screwdriver that works. There's two parts to it. This side we're not going to talk about today, but this side we are going to talk about. The handle has a cross-shaped piece of plastic that fits into this cap, and it helps you tighten it back on. If you want to remove it, you actually use the negative sign. This looks like a negative, this looks like a positive. All you need to do is slip it in here, and it makes it really easy to remove this cap. You want to have the mini bulk standing up at this point, right? So you're removing the cap like this. Then what you can do is purchase a quarter-turn nozzle. One key component you need to know about this is it has to be Teflon coated, because peroxyacetic acid, PAA, is caustic, right? So it's going to break down quickly if you don't have a Teflon coated nozzle. So this actually fits perfect. You can spin it in here, and now when you tip down your mini bulk, you've got a dispenser, right? So you're not glugging it now. At least now you're just dispensing it with the quarter turn on, quarter turn off situation. The other thing to consider here is that when you take this this cap off of the mini bulk, the part of the purpose of this little yellow cap is to allow it to off gas. It does produce some gas. So if you take this out and you put this quarter turn nozzle in, you have to consider that. So two ways to maybe handle that, because if Phil has learned the hard way, let me just tell you, he had this inside a tote and he had this quarter turn nozzle in, and it actually exploded. He didn't know, and maybe a lot of people don't, that it does off gas and that you need to let that pressure out every once in a while. You don't want periacetic acid exploding anywhere. So two ways to handle that would be, one, to tip it up after use and then just leave it open a little if everyone's well trained and knows that if you tip it down the nozzle is open, or to just set up a little bit of a schedule to every once in a while, like come and open it just a little bit so that you can let that gas out. So that's something to consider, maybe helpful for safe dispensing. Another thing, let's see. So here's my recommendation. Just set it up right, no matter what, and then have people learn to check the nozzle. That's the other thing I wanted to tell you.
If you're using cleaners, it's important to consider if those might be caustic or not, and always wear proper PPE. So, you know, reading the label, this might be like stuff you guys already know, but reading the label and making sure that some cleaners require vinyl gloves. They might require an apron just to protect, you know, you or your employees. When working with peroxyacetic acid, you need to wear an apron and some vinyl gloves at the minimum, okay? So Phil has also learned the hard way and burned himself. So he let me tell you these stories. It might be embarrassing, but it's also just real life. So another thing about safe dispensing, you could create a dispensing burette that is kind of a pre-measurement situation so that you don't have to be trying to measure stuff out every single time. You can calibrate this and then just have it. It fits right underneath that dispensing nozzle, and I'm going to build it quickly, really quickly. So you need, again, another one of these quarter-turn nozzles. You need some Teflon tape. This is like just in plumbing supply at your local hardware. You're going to wrap the Teflon tape around and around, and you're going to put a ridiculous amount on here, honestly, because the point is that it is going to keep a very snug fit on this, this tube right here. And I have handouts up here that tell where to source these things and like the requirements of it, okay? So this is gonna have to be like almost forced on, so hard that you're gonna push pretty hard to get it on there, okay? And then you always want to check before you start measuring PAA, check it with water to make sure it doesn't leak. Because what you're about to do is the last little part to tighten this nozzle on. I'm not going to take the time to do this for you guys, sorry, but it's just a hose clamp, right? But if you tighten it too tight, it might make the plastic pucker, and that could cause a point of leakage. So tighten this on, check it with water. If it's leaking, the first thing to check is does loosening this just a tiny bit fix that problem? If it doesn't, you need more Teflon tape, okay? But this is a really easy system. The last part of this is to calibrate it. So the idea would be, let me just make sure I say this right. For Sanidate 5.0, we're not endorsing that product. It's just an example of something a lot of people use. About 2 tablespoons for every 5 gallons of water is approximately 85 parts per million, which is a good measurement for produce washing, for surface sanitization, okay? So what we would do in here is measure in 2 tablespoons of water, right? And to take a little piece of electrical tape, you could just, you know, cut them into tiny strips and measure that spot. Sorry, I planned on showing you, but if you have any questions about this, we can do it back at our booth and we can like walk through it. But so you're gonna measure out your water. If you have a dosing bottle, this one has 1/4 ounce and 1/2 ounce. 1 tablespoon is a 1/2 ounce, okay? So dose, pour it in, dose, pour it in, all the way up to the 1/2 ounce, and you should have 2 tablespoons. Mark that point, and then do that a couple more times. Add 2 more tablespoons, mark it with the tape. 2 more tablespoons, mark it with the tape. Then you can successfully dose up to 15 gallons of water. And you could keep doing this. If you have like a standard tank that you're dosing each time, just keep doing that in increments on your tape and measure it and then mark it so that you know where your top line is. Do you see what I'm saying? Okay, so like say you have a 50-gallon tank, you need 25 marks on here. I don't know if that would work or not, but like on this size tube, but that's the idea. Then you dispense just once out of your mini bulk, and then you dispense it into your water tank, okay? So these are helpful. It's an easy solution. It's pretty cheap. Are there questions on that? I'm racing through it, sorry.
What was the word that you used? Like burette?
Burette, yes. So I have some handouts up here. This is, if you don't know about this site, it's pretty great. There's a site out of University of Vermont called Farm Hack. It's curated by University of Vermont, but it's farmers submitting their hacks and things that they've done to make their life easier on farm. And you can find both the information on the burette and the Farm Hack website link on this handout up here. So feel free to grab one. And the hand washing station handout up here as well. Any other questions on this burette for dispensing sanitizer? The measurements, this is just measurements for PAA, okay? So if you're using some other sanitizer, I would guess you could use the same system if it was convenient for you. You'd have to do the calculations yourself, though. The last thing, if you haven't used a dosing bottle, it seems really simple, but trust me, it's not like totally common sense how to use these. But this is just a dosing bottle for holding whatever you have. Like if you were going to put some PAA in here and then wanted to measure it using this bottle, it saves someone trying to hold a measuring cup under the bulk with, So it's pretty accurate and consistent as well. There's a reason it has two color caps. The black cap is a cap that should never be undone unless you're filling the dosing bottle. The white cap should be vented as you use this bottle, and it's really as simple as just squeezing. Okay, you don't need to do any of that pouring type measurement or action. You just squeeze it, and you'll see it will fill up to a line. Okay, so you get used to squeezing it to the proper line. Okay, and then this one comes off and you pour. The black one never gets opened up. So this is something that you can give your employees to kind of create a good standard measurement every time that is contained. Any questions on the dosing bottle? Okay. All of these supplies, they're available in bulk on Uline. Hopefully, as a community, we'll find a way to source them together, and that might be something to work on as a community is, okay, if we're going to buy these Teflon coated dispensers, they come in a package of what, 100, 500, whatever they are. Who needs them? We'll order them together type of mindset. So sorry I'm flying, but I want to make sure that I show you and Joe has a chance to talk too. Yes, question. Oh, yes, Greg.
Can you speak to what are recommended products for sanitizer?
I'm going to...
Off-the-shelf hydrogen peroxide from the drugstore?
No, I wouldn't say so. I'm going to bounce that to Patrick and Morgan on what they've seen in the field and what people are successfully using for sanitizers. Okay, you're going to pass it to Joe.
There's a spreadsheet available online through the Produce Safety Alliance.
Yeah.
That lists a whole bunch of sanitizers talking about peroxide. Morgan and I actually had a discussion about peroxide a few months ago where we learned that it breaks down really easy and has to be used in a certain way and have a certain makeup to be appropriate for use in some of these applications. So a lot of the common ones we see is just general use bleach. You dilute it in water. We see quaternary ammonium. The Sanidate's a common one. It really just all depends what works for your operation. Obviously, bleach is going to be the most cost effective, but you might use a little more. I don't know what the economics of that work out to be, but as long as it's some sort of sanitizer that's used for food contact surface use, we don't really have one that, is a catch-all or anything like that.
And our discussion about hydrogen peroxide was, it's not regulated the same as other chemicals, so it's hard. There is no thing on the label that will say approved for food contact services. It doesn't have the EPA number because it's not regulated the same. So it doesn't mean that you can't use it, but then ask, how do you ensure that it's doing the intended purpose you're using it for without having that EPA number and that approved use on the label, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's also over-the-counter hydrogen peroxide is not the same concentration as commercial products. Joe's the key point with what he said is it has to be approved for food contact surfaces. Even the bleach, that's kind of something you have to look at the label for. It's not always an easy source. So, okay, I'm just gonna say two things here. Oh, I'm sorry, Greg. Another question. Okay, if this is all okay, this is a lot. Come and have a training and learn even more. It's $100. They're online for the rest of the season, but you will be both overwhelmed and enlightened. And then we'll help you. We'll follow up with you with farm visits to help you apply that information. Okay, so the first step, take a Produce Safety Alliance grower training. You get a certificate that supports your farm and tells that you guys are paying attention to produce safety. And you'll also get farm visits from that point on. I mean, we'll come anyway, but it's a good base knowledge set to start with. Then, On-farm amenities review is one of the ways we come out to the farm. So the technicians are always out at the farm. Then you can also have us come out with a more official visit that is produce safety rule focused and good agricultural practices focused as a secondary. It's just a walkthrough with your farm. It's very low preparation. You don't need any records. And it's really casual. We're just going to walk around and talk with you and help you look at everything you're doing and identify where you may be at risk. It's a good thing to do if you're going to be inspected by MDARD. For the produce safety rule, you should have this done first. Skipping that one, we could talk at the booth if you have questions. And then the newsletter. Come on over to the booth. If you don't have a QR code scanner on your phone or you don't want to do this right now, you could just come and sign up at the booth, put your email address down, and I'll add you to the list and we'll send you the newsletter. The other thing to do when you come to the booth, if you want that sanitizer sheet sent to you, if you have other questions, there's a notes section next to where you put your name and your email address. Just write in what you need or what questions you have, and I'll connect with you, okay? We have a few more programs that I'm going to skip right now. And if you want to learn about the texting service that we offer for free, come to the booth and I'll talk to you. And this water sampling course, it's $12.50. I'll talk to you at the booth. And I'll let Joe talk just real quick.
All right, so we'll kind of talk twofold here real quick. Do I need a microphone?
Here, Joe.
All right. All right, I guess I'll just hold it. Can you hear me all right? Perfect. So how many of you are familiar with the various farm statuses under the produce safety rule? Good. Okay. So basically there's, I think, 4. Either you're not covered, you are qualified exempt, well, I guess there's only 3 then. You're either not covered, qualified exempt, or active, meaning you would need a produce safety rule inspection. So if you have questions about that, we can talk about it at the booth. I actually have some paper surveys that we can work through together. And then, because what we do at the department is if you are an active farm, meaning you need an inspection, we have a list of farms. In the spring, we kind of pull for our season. We try to do about 100 inspections a year. So then we would call ahead of time to schedule an inspection with you. Morgan mentioned that these gap audits and other audits cost a lot of money. We're not competitors with them, but the inspection that you would get every 3 to 5 years is free of cost. So we know it takes up your time during the harvest season, can't get that back, but you don't write us a check or you don't get a bill in the mail afterward. So that's one of the benefits of the inspection. I'm trying to think, I had this all prepped and now I'm just forgetting it. But free of cost, we schedule them in advance. Your first inspection is the initial inspection, meaning that we take a more educational approach. So, Greg, you had questions about, I don't know if my wash pack is set up right. Well, maybe you have it 95% of the way right, and there's just 5% that we can go further and do better. We'll talk through that without saying, oh, you didn't have your trash can for your paper towels or something like that. Something little would be more of, okay, we talked about it. Now we just ask that you have it corrected by the time your routine inspection comes up. There are some things, if they're an imminent public health hazard, that arises to a whole different category. Had my fair share of those. They're few and far between because our Michigan growers are doing great. So I know it can be nerve-wracking to have an inspector from MDARD or Eagle come to the farm, but we do try to be as laid back as I am right now. So like Morgan said, it's a two-way conversation. We learn from you, we hope you learn from us, and there isn't a one-size-fits-all for each farm. My farm would have different resources available than Morgan's farm is going to have different resources available than Patrick's farm. So just kind of making that work and making sure that we're all meeting those minimum requirements is what we're looking for. So going back to the farm status, if you know your farm status, does MDARD know your farm status? If we don't know the farm's status under the FSMA produce safety rule, we would then presume that the farm would be covered and would need an inspection, even though you might not. So if you're not covered, it's as simple as we find out you're not covered, we issue you kind of a written report that we call a verification report. It says you're not covered, we'll talk to you in 4 years. If you need an inspection, okay, we'll note that you're covered and we'll get to you with an inspection when we get to you. Our initial inspections we're hoping to complete those by the end of 2026. So I'm not sure what it'll look like after that. But if you know you need an inspection and are interested in your initial this year or in the next couple of years, definitely feel free to stop by the booth and talk with myself so we can get that straightened out. Plus, I can get you some contact information and we can link you up with some of our other inspectors that are closer to you that maybe you'll see instead of me. Let's see. We don't have much time to talk about that. We talked about the produce safety risk assessment. And then there's my contact information. I also have business cards available today. So I guess with the last 3 minutes, what kind of inspection related or theoreticals type of questions would you have for me since you have one of the regulators in the room?
Would you be willing to go back to the exemption slides?
Yep. So I thought there were 4 statuses because I was going to include processing exempt, but processing exempt may only apply to a specific commodity. So say I grow carrots and apples, kind of a bad combination really because the harvest seasons overlap. But say my apples go for fresh market, but my carrots go for, processed, turned into carrot juice or something like that with a validated kill step. The carrots would be processing exempt, but my farm would still be covered. So our produce safety rule inspection would cover the apples, and we wouldn't worry too much about the carrots in that example. The qualified exempt status is basically you sell the majority of your produce and total food sales. So if my farm had, honey, maple syrup, apples, and strawberries, all of those, I would have to sell more than $30,000 in apples and strawberries, but less than like $600,000 total in all 4 of those commodities, and sell primarily to the consumer directly or a local grocery store or restaurant within 275 miles of the farm or the same state. So from here, you could sell direct to grocery stores in Chicago, or you could run it all the way up to Iron Mountain in the UP. That's still within the same state. So kind of crazy to think about in that way. But yeah, those couple of exemptions, they can get pretty complicated in a hurry. So if you want to come talk through those with me, definitely happy to do that. So any other questions that came up?
It's more of a broad question.
Okay.
Are those numbers going to change, like based on political climate, or like how do they decide that?
So FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, wrote the produce safety rule, and then in Michigan we adopted it by reference into the food law that we have in Michigan. So that's why you hear from myself or one of our other inspectors instead of FDA. We like to think that's a good thing. Maybe not everyone agrees with us, but those numbers, I'm not sure where they came up with the baseline numbers, but those numbers do change because they're based on 2011 numbers. So they change every year. I think in April they'll release the updated numbers. They're based on inflation. So it started at 500,000 for that upper level, and that's why it's grown up to like 600,000. So, but yeah, just to kind of reiterate, none of the inspectors, at this point I'm the one that's been around the longest, so I've worked with everyone. None of us are coming in trying to tell you how to farm or anything. We try to just teach the regulation, how what you're doing fits into it, and maybe an extra couple steps that might help you fit into that even more. And we're really trying to show that our farms in Michigan are taking food safety seriously and are doing a lot of great things. So we can go back to national meetings and hear maybe what other states are saying, and well, our growers in Michigan are already doing that, so we're ahead of that game. So we balance protecting public health while also trying to help improve food safety on the farm for you guys. So even if we're not there, because we're not going to be there every day, obviously, or every minute you're operating, we're going to be there for maybe 4 hours or a little more every 3 to 5 years. A very small snapshot in time. So we really want to make sure that we're only seeing you for routine inspections. I've been to farms for some follow-ups or complaint-related things or investigations, It's few and far between, but those are definitely a different type of interaction than the laid-back routine inspection that we more prefer with all of you. So, yes.
So if your farm doesn't sell 25,000 worth of produce, how do we tell MDARD to stay away from us? Or come here, we're good.
Yeah, so.
Or do we want to have you anyways?
My recommendation there is if you're below $25,000 or $30,000 now, we do not have much authority. You still can't sell adulterated or misbranded produce. That's in the Michigan food law, so that applies to all farms. But you won't get like a routine on-farm inspection from us. If we show up for an inspection at a not covered farm, something went wrong. But basically for that, I would recommend going to this website here. I'm not fancy enough to use QR codes, so I'm sorry for making you write that down. Look for the banner there, and you can fill out an electronic survey that would then say what your status would be as long as it's completed thoroughly. We'll get that result, and then we would just write up one of those verification reports, and we would update the farm status to not covered, and then we wouldn't worry about reaching out to try and schedule an inspection.
We should do that sooner rather than later. Is that?
Yeah, so our verification efforts for farms has kind of evolved over the years. We started with surveys, mailing them. We started with phone calls, emails. Now we're kind of boots on the ground, stopping at farms as we're out and about. So we'll stop by to talk, say hello, get to know you, but we're not stopping by necessarily to conduct an inspection that day unannounced. It's more to figure out if you would need an inspection. So I guess if you want to eliminate that possible unannounced visit, I would recommend filling out the survey. Not to try and scare you guys, but that's just where we're at with developing our inventory, because we have certain numbers that we're supposed to meet from FDA, and now that's just kind of how we're getting to those numbers. So, yes.
Does MEEP status have any implication in this?
Nope. MEEP is a different program that focuses on the environmental aspects. We're more of the food safety on the farm. So it's great that you're working with the MEEP technicians. If you have that certification, definitely not required by any means. So, and I didn't finish my thought with your question of if you're not covered, telling MDARD to stay away from you. So if you're below that $30,000, MDARD isn't going to do too much at the farm. Like I said, if we're there, something went wrong. So if you're in that farm size, that's where I would recommend working pretty much exclusively with Heather, Phil, or your local technician, whether it's Patrick, Morgan, or one of the other technicians. They'll be able to help you out with your questions and things like that.
Thank you.
Definitely happy to answer questions from any farm in the state, but definitely I'm more of a proponent of pushing you to people that are more suitable to help you. I don't like making up answers, so sometimes I have to, but if I don't have to, I try not to. But other than that, thank you all for being here this morning, and feel free to stop by and ask questions.